I always thought if my marriage ended, it would be with a whisper, not a detonation. But the moment I opened that bedroom door, everything I believed in exploded into ash. My name is Alex Hayes. I'm 36 years old, and 6 years ago, I married the woman I thought I'd grow old with, Megan. Smart, beautiful, funny in a way that made people lean in, not pull back. We met on Instagram of all places. What started as casual DMs turned into long midnight conversations, then weekend getaways, and eventually, wedding vows whispered beneath strings of fairy lights at a vineyard in Northern California. Megan made me believe love could heal, that I could escape the legacy of chaos I came from, screaming matches at 2 a.m., shattered dishes, a father too broken to leave. I was cautious. I watched for red flags like a soldier clearing a minefield. But Megan? She passed every test. Kind to waiters, composed under pressure, careful with money. She laughed at my dumb jokes and left little notes in my lunchbox. I thought I broke the cycle. I thought I found peace. God, I was wrong. 2 weeks ago, I was in Denver for a business expo. Boring stuff. PowerPoint decks and lukewarm coffee. Then, on day 3, disaster struck back at headquarters. Server crash, client data loss, full-blown corporate panic. My boss called everyone home. I caught the earliest flight, already imagining the look on Megan's face when I walked through the door. She always loved surprises. At least, that's what I thought. On the Uber ride from the airport, I stopped at this high-end florist we used for our wedding. Bought an $80 bouquet of her favorite purple orchids. They always reminded her of our first date. I grabbed a bottle of champagne and her favorite dark chocolate from that overpriced shop near our place. I was crafting a moment, a romantic reset. We'd been distant lately, caught in a cycle of late work nights and quiet dinners. But I believed this would fix it. Remind her of us, of why we fell in love. I remember walking up to our front door like it was yesterday. It was a crisp Thursday afternoon, 2:03 p.m., to be exact. Megan's car was in the driveway, which made sense. She worked from home on Thursdays. Everything looked normal, ordinary, until it didn't. As I stepped inside, the house greeted me with silence, except for faint music drifting from upstairs. Her playlist, the one she only played when she was in a good mood. That struck me as odd. So did the 2 wine glasses in the kitchen sink. I paused for a moment, chalking it up to a friend visiting for lunch. But the unease was already crawling up my spine. I climbed the stairs slowly, balancing flowers, chocolates, and a bottle of champagne. I had no idea I was walking into a war zone, one I hadn't been warned about. The music got louder. So did the other sounds. You know how in horror movies, the audience screams at the protagonist not to open the door? That was me. I wish someone had stopped me. I wish I had stopped myself. I opened the bedroom door with a smile on my face. The smile died instantly. There, in our bed, the bed we picked out together, the bed we slept in after her father passed away, the bed where we talked about having children, was Megan. Naked, writhing under a man I had never seen in my life. Time stopped. My arms dropped. The orchids scattered across the floor like confetti at a funeral. My stomach twisted. My heart, I swear, physically cracked. The guy didn't even look guilty, just startled. He tried to gather his clothes and scurry past me like I was some hotel concierge interrupting his room service. I blocked the doorway, my vision red. My hand moved before my brain did. I grabbed him by the collar. Nothing violent, just enough to let him know he wasn't walking out without acknowledging what he'd done. I slapped him. Twice. Open-handed. Soap opera style. I don't even know why. I think it was the absurdity of it all. Punching him didn't seem right, but I needed to do something. He looked ready to fight. For a split second, I saw rage flash in his eyes like I was the intruder. That's when I realized. He probably didn't know Megan was married. Hell, she probably told him I was an ex, or out of the picture. The betrayal sank deeper. I let him go. He wasn't the one who promised me forever. He wasn't the one I built a life with. Megan sat on the edge of the bed, slowly putting on her bra like I'd just walked in while she was brushing her teeth. No shame, no guilt, just annoyance. And then she had the audacity to look at me and say, "Why are you even back?" That's when I knew. She had stopped being my wife long before that day. The woman I once adored? She died the moment she opened her legs to a stranger in the bed we once called ours. And that was just the beginning. I didn't speak. Not at first. What the hell do you even say when your wife looks you dead in the eye, while still half naked and sweaty from her affair, and asks why you're home? I stood there, frozen, like my brain had been ripped from my skull. The flowers were still on the floor, crushed under the feet of her lover. The champagne bottle rested against the doorframe, forgotten. My heart? Somewhere on the carpet, bleeding out quietly between the wrinkled sheets. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. Megan just sat there brushing her hair, avoiding eye contact like I'd interrupted her Zoom meeting, not caught her destroying our marriage. I remember my hand twitching. Not from rage exactly, but from this violent swirl of disbelief and betrayal boiling in my chest like lava beneath the surface. You weren't supposed to be back, she muttered, under her breath. That's when I felt it, the sharp snap of something breaking inside me. 6 years of loyalty, late-night talks, anniversary surprises, sacrifices, reduced to that one line. You weren't supposed to be back. I wanted to scream, to flip the damn dresser, to break something, anything, just to match the chaos she had just unleashed into my life. But I didn't. I just stood there, shaking, trying to process how someone could burn everything to the ground and then get annoyed that you showed up with a fire extinguisher. Get out, I whispered, not sure if I meant her, him, or myself. He was already gone, by the way. Didn't even bother to look me in the eye. Just grabbed his shoes and bolted like a rat from a sinking ship. Coward. I didn't even get his name, not that it mattered. He wasn't the one who looked me in the eye 6 years ago and promised forever. Megan finally turned toward me, tying the waistband of her robe with the same energy she used when getting ready for a grocery run. It's not what you think, she said, like this was some bad sitcom plot twist. I laughed. It came out rough and bitter. Oh, really? Because it looked a hell of a lot like you were having sex with a stranger in our bed. You never listen, she snapped suddenly, her voice sharp. You've been distant for months. You work late. You don't even try anymore. You wouldn't even consider an open relationship when I asked. Wait, you're blaming me for this? My voice finally found its strength, rising with every word. Her face flushed, eyes flaring. I have needs, Alex. You're never around. I tried to be honest with you, and you shot me down. What was I supposed to do? Be miserable? Wait around for scraps of affection? I blinked. This wasn't a woman caught red-handed. This was a woman rewriting the narrative mid-scene, flipping the script like she was the victim. Gaslighting at its finest. I backed away, my chest tight, my thoughts spinning like a blender on high. I couldn't stay another second in that room. The bed felt haunted. The air stank of betrayal. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, and walked out the door like a ghost escaping its own grave. I ended up at my best friend Tyler's apartment. He took one look at me, wordlessly handed me a glass of whiskey, and sat with me in silence until I finally broke. I caught her, I said. In our bed. With some guy. Tyler didn't flinch. He just nodded slowly, like part of him always expected it. He'd never liked Megan. Said she was too polished, too performative. I'm sorry, man, he said. But you need to lawyer up. Now. That's when the real war began. The next morning, I called out of work, still shaking. I booked a consult with a divorce attorney named Mr. Carter, recommended by a coworker. Smart guy. Calm. The type who probably sleeps with legal codes under his pillow. I told him everything from the affair to the texts Megan had sent weeks prior, where she'd hinted at being unfulfilled and open to new adventures. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. Do you have proof of the affair? Photos? Messages? Anything that puts her in the wrong? I've got some texts. And I caught them in the act. In person. He nodded. Good. You're in a better position than most. But here's the kicker. This is a no-fault state. Adultery doesn't automatically mean she gets nothing. And if you're the higher earner, she may still go after alimony. I stared at him. You're telling me the woman who just screwed someone in my house could get a monthly paycheck from me for it? Welcome to the system, he said. That's why we need documentation. Screenshots. Dates. Receipts. Anything that proves she was actively involved in the affair. Especially if she's been using joint funds or neglecting responsibilities. I left the meeting more furious than when I'd arrived. Megan had flipped my life upside down, and now the law might reward her for it? Tyler helped me start the digital paper trail. We scoured old texts, emails, social media posts. Anything that could show her double life. I backed up everything to the cloud, organized it in folders like evidence for a criminal trial. Which, in a way, it was. She hadn't just betrayed me, she was trying to profit off it. And in the pit of my gut, I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because Megan wasn't the kind of woman who lets go quietly. No. She was just getting started. It's funny how fast things unravel once the mask comes off. By the end of that first week, Megan had morphed into someone I didn't recognize. The woman I once slow danced with in the kitchen now sent texts that would make a prison inmate blush. I had gone from husband to hated enemy overnight, and the gloves were off. It started with texts. At first, she begged me to come home, claimed the affair meant nothing, said she was confused that I had caught her during a moment of weakness. But when I didn't respond, the tone changed. Fast. "You think you're so perfect," she wrote. "You're boring in bed. You don't excite me." He does. I stared at the message on my screen, stunned. Just last week, she was sending heart emojis with "I love you" attached. Now she was writing me a sexual Yelp review comparing me to the guy she cheated with. She described everything from his size to how he knew how to touch her. I remember reading it twice, not out of pain, but disbelief. She wanted to hurt me. She needed to. As if tearing me down would justify what she did. I didn't respond. Instead, I took screenshots. Every word, every vile comparison, every admission of infidelity. Tyler reminded me, again and again, document everything. Don't take the bait. But she wasn't done. Hours later, I got another message. "You ruined it." I was finally happy. "You just had to come back early." No apology. No shame. Just resentment that I had interrupted her fairy tale fling. In her twisted mind, I wasn't the betrayed husband. I was the villain who ruined her romance. I started seeing patterns. This wasn't random rage, it was strategy. She was baiting me, pushing me to explode so she could flip the script and play the victim. Make me the abusive husband in her story. Tyler saw right through it. She's trying to make you hit back. Give her something she can take to court. A bruise. A voicemail. Anything. That's when it hit me. Megan didn't just want out. She wanted to win. And to her, winning meant bleeding me dry. We were still technically married, and in our state, that meant she could go after alimony. I earned 3 times her income. She worked part-time at a boutique, mostly just for appearances. I paid the mortgage, the bills, the health insurance. Everything. And now, the same woman who had moaned another man's name in my bed wanted me to pay her to move on. The legal system didn't make it easy either. Mr. Carter had warned me about this. "You're the primary earner. Unless we can prove infidelity and strategic manipulation, she might still qualify for support." So I got serious. I printed receipts, flagged texts, logged timestamps. Every late-night, girls' night she used as cover. Every Uber trip charged to our joint account that ended at unfamiliar addresses. Every lie she wrapped in a kiss before walking out the door. Then came the emails, ones she had forgotten to delete. I found messages to a friend where she gushed about being with a man who makes her feel alive again. She called me deadweight, claimed she was just waiting for the right moment to leave. Turns out that right moment was whenever she bled me for what she could. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. Not just the cheating, not just the public humiliation. It was the cold calculation behind it all. Like I'd been a stepping stone, nothing more. But there was a silver lining. Mr. Carter reviewed the evidence and his eyebrows actually rose. "This is strong," he said, tapping the printed messages. "Very strong. With this, we may be able to reduce or eliminate spousal support." For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to hope. Maybe justice wouldn't be blind. Maybe it just needed receipts. Still, I was living in a surreal state. One minute, I was making love to my wife. The next, I was building a legal case against her. Every memory we'd made, every trip, every inside joke, was now part of an autopsy report on a dead marriage. And she wasn't done playing games. Megan began dodging the divorce papers. She changed her schedule, claimed she'd moved, and even had her mother tell the process server she'd relocated to Florida. It was childish, petty, but effective. Every delay cost me more in legal fees. She was bleeding me out slowly, 1 hour of lawyer time at a time. She knew what she was doing. Every missed signature, every forgotten document. It was all part of her game, to exhaust me into surrender. But I wouldn't give her that. Tyler kept reminding me, "You already lost your marriage. Don't lose your dignity too." And I didn't. I refused to be the angry ex. I refused to lash out. Instead, I built a case, brick by brick, word by word, betrayal by betrayal. Because if Megan wanted a war, she picked the wrong man to burn. They say time heals. I say time numbs. After weeks of betrayal, legal warfare, and venomous texts from Megan, I didn't feel healed. I just felt hollow. I was sleeping on a pull-out couch at Tyler's place, surrounded by boxes of legal documents, receipts, and screenshots. My life had become a courtroom waiting to happen. My meals came from takeout bags. My thoughts were consumed by court dates and legal loopholes. And my heart? It was somewhere buried under the wreckage of a marriage I no longer recognized. Tyler tried to get me out of the house, but everything felt forced. The bars were too loud. The women too fake. The small talk too exhausting. I downloaded dating apps on a whim, Bumble, Hinge, even Tinder, and swiped like a man trying to convince himself he was okay. I wasn't. Every date felt like a mask I couldn't keep on for long. A drink, a smile, maybe a kiss, but the next morning always felt worse than the one before. That emptiness? It's like trying to patch a bullet wound with a Band-Aid. Then came the bookstore. It was a random Saturday. Cold, overcast, and I needed to get out of Tyler's apartment before I went insane. I hadn't picked up a book in years, not since Megan, not since the late nights of comfort reading during my 20s. Back then, sci-fi was my escape. Asimov, Bradbury, Clark. I loved the idea of entire galaxies where betrayal didn't exist. I stepped into this little independent shop tucked between a tea house and an antique store downtown. It smelled like old paper, cedarwood, and peace. No lawyers. No echo of Megan's voice. Just creaky floorboards and shelves that reached toward the ceiling. I wandered to the sci-fi section and froze. It was overwhelming. What used to be a genre of a few classics had exploded into universes I didn't recognize. Multi-book epics. Covers I couldn't pronounce. I stood there staring at the spines like a man who had just landed on Mars without a map. Then I heard it. A laugh. Soft. Genuine. Not mocking, more amused, like watching a kid try to solve a Rubik's Cube for the first time. "I take it you're lost?" a voice said beside me. I turned, and there she was. She held a thick book in her hands, her hair tucked behind one ear. Eyes lit up with warmth I hadn't seen in what felt like years. Her name was Olivia. "I used to read this stuff religiously," I said, smiling awkwardly. "Now I feel like I've stepped into a foreign country." "Well," she said, holding up the book like a passport, "consider me your guide." We talked. That's it. No flirting. No posturing. Just two strangers discussing wormholes, time travel, and which sci-fi authors wrote the best endings. She didn't ask what I did for work. She didn't ask why I looked like I hadn't slept in weeks. She just talked. And more importantly, she listened. 2 hours passed like 20 minutes. When I finally worked up the courage to ask for her number, my hand trembled like a teenager's. She smiled as she typed it into my phone. "You'll like the three-body problem," she said. "It's heavy but brilliant." That night, I didn't get drunk. I didn't scroll through legal documents. I sat on Tyler's couch, book in hand, texting Olivia about the first chapter. Our messages were effortless. No manipulation. No emotional blackmail. Just two people geeking out over fictional aliens. But I knew I had to be honest. On our first date, an actual dinner, not drinks at a bar, I told her about Megan. I told her everything. The affair. The legal battles. The restraining order I was considering filing. I laid it all out, expecting her to bolt. Instead, Olivia took a sip of her wine, looked me in the eye, and said, "Thank you for not lying. Everyone has baggage. Yours just has a few more teeth than most." I laughed, genuinely. For the first time in months, I felt light. She didn't flinch when I mentioned court filings. She didn't recoil at the mention of my ex. She didn't make me feel like damaged goods. She made me feel human again. She remembered things, little things. Like how I took my coffee. What authors I liked. The way I clenched my jaw when I was stressed. She'd send me texts before court hearings. "You've got this." Or drop off a book with a note inside. Something to take your mind off the crazy. And she never asked for more than I could give. She didn't rush me. She didn't pry. She just stayed. Present. Kind. Real. Meanwhile, Megan was still stalling the divorce. Dodging paperwork. Making ridiculous demands through her lawyer. She wanted the house. My 401k. Even the dog, who she hated. It was all about control. About dragging me through the mud just because I dared to move on. But Olivia? She never said a word against Megan. She just held my hand during the phone calls with my lawyer, rubbed my back when I couldn't sleep, and reminded me that none of this defined me. For the first time since my life shattered, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild. I wasn't healed. Not yet. But I had found something real in the rubble. A spark. And I was ready to protect it. No matter what came next. There's a moment, right before your world collapses, where everything feels perfect. That's what made it worse. Olivia and I had just spent a perfect Saturday together. lunch at a cozy little cafe downtown, browsing through old records at a thrift shop, laughing over a shared milkshake like two teenagers who never knew pain. For once, I wasn't thinking about Megan or court dates or alimony threats. I was thinking about now. About her. About us. We walked out of the mall hand in hand, the sun dipping low on the horizon, streaking the sky with pink and gold. Olivia was laughing. Something about how I butchered the name of a sci-fi author she loved. And I remember thinking this. This is what peace feels like. Then I heard the engine. It was a sound that didn't belong. A deep roar, like a predator on the hunt. Tires screeching. A rev so sharp it pierced the evening calm like a knife through paper. I turned my head toward the sound. A car. Speeding. Straight at us. Olivia, I shouted, grabbing her arm, trying to yank her out of the way. But it was too fast. She was too close. The bumper clipped her leg, and I watched her body twist unnaturally before she crumpled to the pavement, screaming in pain. Her scream will haunt me forever. It wasn't just pain. It was terror, confusion, betrayal all rolled into one horrifying sound. I dropped to my knees beside her, shielding her body with mine, my hands shaking as I fumbled for my phone to call 911. But the car didn't stop. The tires screeched again as it backed up, slamming into another parked vehicle with a crunch of metal and glass. The engine roared louder this time, like a beast denied its prey, and that's when I realized it wasn't over. They were coming back. This wasn't a hit and run. This was intentional. I grabbed Olivia, who was sobbing, her leg bent at a sickening angle, and dragged her between two parked cars. Every movement made her cry out in pain, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The car slammed forward again, crashing into the cars we were hiding behind. Alarms blared. People screamed. Cell phones were raised. The entire parking lot became a swirl of chaos and disbelief. Then the driver's door opened, and my blood turned to ice. It was Megan. She stepped out calmly, like she was arriving at a dinner party, not like she had just tried to murder two people in broad daylight. Her hair was perfectly styled, her blazer pristine, her heels clicking ominously against the pavement. But her eyes, they were wild, unrecognizable, burning with a rage I'd never seen before. Not even during our worst fights. Not even when I caught her cheating. She had followed us. She had planned this. The car. The timing. The attack. It wasn't a crime of passion. It was cold. Calculated. Deliberate. As I held Olivia, trying to keep her calm through her cries of pain, Megan walked toward us, heels clicking like a countdown to madness. She didn't say a word at first. Just stared, her lips slightly curled, as if she were proud of what she'd done. I was sure she had a weapon. A gun. A knife. Something to finish the job. But before she could reach us, a man, broad, built like a linebacker, tackled her from the side. Megan screamed and thrashed like a wild animal, but he held her down until police arrived. I couldn't take my eyes off her. This was the woman I married. The woman who used to make me breakfast on Sundays. The woman who once cried on my shoulder at her father's funeral. Now, she was being handcuffed in front of a dozen witnesses while my girlfriend bled on the pavement. Paramedics arrived. Olivia's face was pale, her body shaking from shock. She still managed to squeeze my hand and whisper, "I'm okay," even though she clearly wasn't. They loaded her into the ambulance, and I rode with her, numb, silent, processing what I had just witnessed. Megan hadn't just wanted to hurt me. She wanted to destroy me, and she didn't care who she took down in the process. At the hospital, I sat beside Olivia, who was being prepped for emergency surgery. Pins would have to be inserted to stabilize her leg. She tried to smile. She even made a joke. At least now I have an excuse to skip leg day. I tried to smile back, but inside, I was screaming. I had underestimated Megan. I thought she was bitter, vengeful, manipulative, but I never thought she'd go this far. And now, I had no choice. This wasn't just about divorce anymore. It was about survival. Because when someone you once loved tries to kill you in a parking lot, you stop playing defense, and you start preparing for war. I always thought evil wore a mask, cold, dark, maybe with glowing red eyes. But that night, I learned something different. Sometimes evil wears lipstick, a blazer, and smiles for security cameras before attempting murder. The police were already building the case before Megan was even booked into the jail. The moment they saw the footage from the parking lot cameras, everything changed. The video was crystal clear, high-definition horror, captured from multiple angles. Megan's car circling us not once, not twice, but 3 times. Like a shark waiting for the right moment to strike. She parked. She waited. She watched. And then she floored it. The district attorney called it one of the most clear-cut cases of premeditated attempted murder she'd ever seen. It wasn't a sudden outburst of emotion. It wasn't a heat-of-the-moment snap. It was calculated, calm, clinical. You want to know the worst part? Right before she accelerated, right before the car screamed toward Olivia, Megan adjusted her lipstick in the rearview mirror, as if she were preparing for a job interview. I watched that footage in a cold conference room with the DA, my lawyer Mr. Carter, and 2 detectives. My hands clenched into fists as I saw myself on screen, completely unaware of the predator circling. Then came the impact. Olivia falling. Me dragging her. The second charge. The tackle. The handcuffs. All of it was there. And somehow, it didn't feel real. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by Olivia's hospital bed as machines beeped and 4 bags dripped. Her leg was now full of pins and plates. Her body was bruised. Her future uncertain. Yet she still smiled at me like I was the one who needed comforting. She missed my head. Olivia joked weakly, her voice laced with pain. That's something. I wanted to cry. Instead, I kissed her forehead and whispered, I'm so sorry. But she shook her head. Don't you dare apologize. You didn't do this. She did. And now she's going to pay. She was right. This wasn't my fault. This was Megan's descent into madness. And I had simply been standing in the way of the fire she was determined to spread. The trial moved faster than expected. The judge denied bail, calling Megan a clear and present danger. Her defense team tried to spin a story of mental breakdown, emotional trauma, temporary insanity. But the video didn't lie. Neither did the witnesses. Dozens of people were in that parking lot. Some testified in court. One was a retired police officer who helped subdue Megan after the attack. Another was a teenager who filmed the entire incident on his phone. A soccer mom who had just loaded groceries into her SUV sobbed as she described watching Olivia's body hit the pavement. And then Olivia took the stand. Pins still in her leg. A cane at her side. Dressed simply, no theatrics, no drama. She told the truth, what she saw, what she felt, and how close she came to dying because she had the audacity to fall in love with me. I testified too, about the texts, the threats, the affair, the months of manipulation, and the gradual descent from betrayal to attempted murder. I watched Megan while I spoke, and I swear to God, she looked right through me, like I was the ghost, not her. She dabbed her eyes with tissues, put on the performance of a lifetime. But the jury didn't buy it. Neither did the judge. They found her guilty on all counts: reckless endangerment, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and premeditated attempted murder. Then came the sentencing. 12 years. 12 years in a state prison, with the possibility of early release for good behavior. 12 years for trying to kill 2 people in broad daylight. It didn't feel like enough, but it felt like something. Megan turned to us during the sentencing hearing, her hands cuffed, her jumpsuit wrinkled. I wasn't myself, she said. I just wanted to stop hurting. I didn't know what I was doing. Bullshit. You don't check your lipstick before committing a crime of passion. You don't stalk your ex-husband, follow him for miles, and wait for the perfect opening to plow down the woman he loves, unless you do know exactly what you're doing. Olivia didn't say a word. She just looked Megan in the eyes, unmoved, unwavering. That silence said more than 1,000 insults ever could. And then, just like that, it was over. Except it wasn't. Because Megan may have gone to prison, but her damage lingered. Bruises on Olivia's skin, scars under mine. I still woke up in a cold sweat, hearing tires screeching and bones breaking. I still scanned every parking lot before stepping into it. But for the first time in a long time, we could breathe. We could heal. We could begin again. And as we walked out of the courthouse together, Olivia's arm in mine, I knew one thing. She didn't win. Not even close. Megan always liked to win. She played life like a chessboard, carefully, strategically. She manipulated. She positioned herself. She smiled through gritted teeth while stacking the odds in her favor. But after the trial, after the guilty verdict was read and the prison sentence handed down, she discovered something she couldn't outmaneuver. Consequences. Her reign was over. In the weeks following her conviction, the divorce proceedings, once a never-ending battlefield of delays and petty demands, suddenly accelerated. It was as if the entire system stopped entertaining her theatrics. Her lawyer tried to argue for property division, claiming Megan was still entitled to half the house, part of my 401k, even alimony. That was the breaking point. The judge, a grizzled man who had likely seen every kind of family implosion possible, looked up from the paperwork with tired eyes and said, "The court does not reward attempted murderers with financial compensation." And just like that, Megan's demands evaporated. She was allowed to attend the hearing via video from prison. She wore an orange jumpsuit and sat stiffly behind a steel table in some cinderblock room, a guard nearby. She looked tired, less polished, like her layers of control had finally peeled away. But even then, even from inside a cell, she tried to command the narrative. Her lawyer asked the court to consider her emotional distress in the context of a difficult divorce. The judge shut it down in one sentence. She's lucky she didn't kill them both. She walks away with what she brought into the marriage, nothing more. The final ruling was cold, swift, and just. Megan would get no spousal support, no part of the house, no slice of my retirement. The only thing she left the marriage with was her personal belongings and her prison commissary account. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled for the first time in what felt like years. Tyler, who had sat beside me through every court date, leaned over and whispered, "Checkmate." Even Mr. Carter, my lawyer, stoic, composed, never one for theatrics, cracked a grin when the judge slammed the gavel. Megan had played every angle, pulled every string, manipulated every system she could touch, and she lost. Completely. But there was still one ghost to exorcise. The house. I tried. I really did. I told myself I could stay. That walls were just walls. That a bedroom was just a place to sleep, not a battlefield of memories. But every time I walked through that front door, it hit me. The sound of tires screeching. The feel of orchids falling from my hands. The echo of her voice. "You weren't supposed to be back." I couldn't breathe in that house. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't heal. So I packed what mattered, sold the rest, and walked away from it all. Olivia and I moved into a small loft closer to the city. Exposed brick. Tall windows. No ghosts. It wasn't huge. It wasn't flashy. But it was ours. And more importantly, it wasn't haunted by Megan's shadow. Olivia was healing too. Her leg had mended. The cast was gone. The limp was fading. But the trauma, that lingered. She had nightmares sometimes, waking up gasping, hand gripping her thigh where the bone had once shattered. But every morning, she smiled at me. And every night, she whispered, "We made it." And somehow, that made it all bearable. We laughed again, ate real dinners instead of takeout, read books curled up on the couch instead of flipping through court filings. We rebuilt, one layer at a time. No pressure. No performance. Just two people who had been through hell and found each other in the rubble. We even joked, darkly, about what had happened. "Hey," Olivia would smirk, "on the bright side, getting hit by a car really cleared out your dating history." I'd roll my eyes, but I loved that about her. The way she could turn pain into something light, something survivable. And then one night, as we stood on the balcony watching the city lights flicker below, she turned to me and said, "I think I'm ready." "For what?" I asked. "To stop surviving and start living." I didn't say anything. I just took her hand and held it tight. Megan may have stolen years from me. She may have tried to destroy everything I loved. But she failed. I had Olivia. I had peace. And for the first time in a long time, I had freedom. They say time heals all wounds. I disagree. Time doesn't heal, it hides. It lets the scars fade just enough so you can carry on without breaking down in the grocery store or flinching at the sound of squealing tires. But healing? No. That comes from choice. From people. From facing the wreckage, not outrunning it. Olivia and I chose to heal. Together. It wasn't easy. The physical therapy appointments, the nightmares, the awkward questions from well-meaning friends. The way Olivia would instinctively tense every time a car turned too sharply near a crosswalk. The way I couldn't drive past our old neighborhood without my pulse spiking. But we were determined. We attended trauma counseling. We rebuilt trust in the world, one quiet day at a time. We filled our new home with warmth, with laughter, with stories, with life. We even went back to that bookstore, the one where we met. It was Olivia's idea. I hesitated, but she looked at me with that mischievous grin and said, "If I can survive being Megan's hood ornament, I can survive a few book spines." So we went. The smell of old paper hit me like a warm memory. The aisles were the same creaky floorboards, The same sleepy cat curled up by the register. And as we wandered into the sci-fi section, just like the first time, I realized something. This was our origin story. Not Megan. Not the betrayal. Not the courtroom drama. Us. Olivia picked out a book, handed it to me with a wink. Inside, she had written on the title page, "To Alex, proof that even in the ruins, stars are born." I hugged her hard, because in that moment, I knew what I wanted next. A few weeks later, we stood in front of a small group of friends at a quiet ceremony in the hills. No cathedral, no choir, no chaos, just us, wind in our hair, vows whispered under the open sky. I married her. I married the woman who held me up when I was shattered. The woman who laughed at my worst jokes, who limped into court just to testify against a monster. The woman who taught me that love wasn't just about sparks, it was about safety, about peace. We spent our honeymoon up north, in a cabin surrounded by trees, completely off-grid. No phones, no emails, no court dates or drama. Just books, firewood, and the soft sound of her breathing beside me. It was heaven, but even heaven has shadows. A few months later, I got the letter. It was official. Megan was appealing her conviction. I stared at the envelope for a long time, my hands shaking. Part of me wasn't surprised. The woman who tried to kill me, twice, wasn't the type to stay buried quietly behind bars. But this reopened wounds I thought had finally scabbed over. I showed it to Olivia. She read it, folded it, and set it aside. "She doesn't win," she said. "Not now, not ever." Her confidence grounded me. I called Mr. Carter, who was already on it. "Let her appeal," he said. "She'll lose. And even if by some miracle she gets a reduced sentence, we have protections in place. You're both safe." Still, I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how close she'd come to succeeding. Not just in hurting us, but in haunting us forever. But here's the truth. Megan no longer controls the narrative. She can write her letters, file her appeals, scream from behind her cell walls. But she doesn't own my story anymore. That belongs to me. To us. Olivia and I now volunteer at a support group for survivors of partner violence and emotional trauma. We share our story, not for pity, but to show others what survival looks like. What justice can look like. What healing really means when you've been pushed to the brink. And every time we tell it, I feel lighter. I don't flinch at the word ex-wife anymore. I don't feel shame for staying too long, or guilt for leaving too late. I feel proud. Because I lived. Because Olivia lived. Because love, real love, found a way through the fire. The final order of protection remains in place for life. Megan can't come within 500 feet of either of us, and when she eventually does get out, she'll be stepping into a world that has moved on without her. I don't know where she'll go. I don't care. We've got plans now, real ones. A trip to the coast. A puppy we named Nova. And maybe, someday, a child who will grow up never knowing the kind of poison Megan carried in her bones. We still go to the bookstore. Still laugh over sci-fi debates. Still make coffee and leave little notes for each other. Because this quiet life filled with truth and safety and love, is the revenge I never knew I needed. Megan tried to kill us, but all she did was set us free. Looking back on everything, I've come to realize that some of life's hardest lessons don't come in quiet whispers. They arrive like storms, tearing everything apart so you can see what truly matters. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone, especially those who've lived long enough to know love, loss, and regret, it's this. Never ignore your peace to preserve someone else's chaos. I spent years convincing myself that loyalty meant endurance, that commitment meant suffering in silence. But love, real love, doesn't ask you to lose yourself. It doesn't come with conditions, manipulation, or fear. It shows up with kindness, respect, and a hand that steadies yours when the world shakes. So if something feels wrong, trust it. If someone shows you who they are, believe them. Document the truth. Speak it. Protect your peace as fiercely as your family, because no one else will do it for you. And most of all, it's never too late to start again. I thought my story ended in betrayal. But sometimes, the most beautiful chapters come after the darkest ones. You just have to keep turning the page.